from Breaking and Blessing by Reverend Sean Parker Dennison. To invoke love is to ask for a hug from a thunderstorm, spill tea in the lap of the infinite trickster, to make the biggest, most embarrassing mistake of your life in front of everything and everyone who matters. To invoke love is to play the fool, the one more concerned with loving than with appearance or reputation, the one ready and willing to be vulnerable, abandoning anything that gets in love's way. To invoke love is to be ready to become love, here, now, in everything we do. Are you ready? Let us worship together.
We dance, we sing our song. We need to feel there's something here to which we can belong. We need to feel the freedom just to have some time alone. But most of all, we need close friends we can call our very own. And we believe in life and in the strength of love. And we have found a need to be together. We have our hearts to give. We have our thoughts to receive. And we believe that sharing is an answer. Our child is born among us and we feel our special glow. We see time's endless journey as we watch the baby grow. We thrill to hear imagination freely running wild. We dedicate our minds and heart to the spirit of this child, and we believe in life and in the strength
Welcome to the Unitarian Church of Baton Rouge. We are so glad you are joining us today for this virtual service. My name is Leslie Runnels. I use her and she pronouns, and I am your ministerial intern. I am joined today safely in the congregation with Lee Hartman, our music program director, and making magic in the technology treehouse is Ed Benoit. This church is also served by Reverend Nathan Ryan, our senior minister, and Reverend Eric Poza, our interim minister. Kathy Smith, who is our director of religious education, will be sharing a story during the lesson, and we are inviting you to get out your art supplies and to draw along with us. So go get your art supplies while you can, and hopefully, as you finish your art today, you will take a picture and send it to me. You'll see my email address later in the service today. We wanted to make sure that you use this time in a healing, healthy way. We know that being on screen so much right now during the pandemic, we're working online, we're in school online, we're doing worship service online. It's a lot of online. So if you need to rest your eyes from the screen, take to the page. If you think you can't draw, know that you can. If all you do is draw some circles and color them in, or some squares, triangles, trees, squiggles all over a page, however you want to do that is perfectly well. I have found that in the pandemic, actually making art while I'm listening online has been a beautiful way to merge spiritual practices, and I hope you find this works for you as well. If you are a visitor and want to know more about the Unitarian Universalist faith or this church family, this congregation, we have a new Roots class starting at the end of this month on February 25th, and it will run for 3 Thursdays in a row. If you'd like more information, email membership@unitarianchurchbr.com. And also, you are joining us on YouTube. We would love it if you would click the like button. Clicking that like button allows neighbors and guests who are looking for us to find us more easily. So if they type in to search for Unitarian Universalist near me, the Baton Rouge website, the Baton Rouge Church website will probably pop up, but also our worship videos will pop up, and then they can click and see who we are and how we worship together. Another way to invite our neighbors and guests in is to share on Facebook or other social media. Just click that share button. While this church works and plays to bring about social justice and racial justice, we know that February is recognized as Black History Month. May all the other months be known as Black Futures Months. And now we will go to our lesson with Kathy Smith.
Good morning. This morning's worship service is all about art and inspiration and letting go of perfection and following your imagination. And so this morning, as we tell this story, it's an old favorite, The Big Orange Splot by Daniel Manus Pinkwater. And as I tell the story and maybe through the service, I'd like to invite you to grab a piece of paper and a pencil and do some drawing, maybe some coloring of your fanciful, imaginative dream house. And maybe even after the service, send a picture of it to Leslie. I'm sure she'd love to see it. So here is our story, The Big Orange Splot. Mr. Plumbeam lived on a street where all the houses were the same. He liked it that way. So did everybody else on Mr. Plumbeam's street. "This is a neat street," they would say. Then one day, a seagull flew over Mr. Plumbeam's house. He was carrying a can of bright orange paint. Nobody knows why. And right over Mr. Plumbeam's house, He dropped the can of paint. Nobody knows why about that either. The paint left a big orange splot on Mr. Plumbeam's house. "Oh, too bad," everybody said. "Mr. Plumbeam will have to paint his house again." "I suppose I will," said Mr. Plumbeam. But he didn't paint his house right away. He looked at the big orange spot for a really long time, and then he went around his business. The neighbors got tired of seeing the big orange spot. Someone said, "Mr. Plumbeam, we wish you would paint your house again." "Okay," said Mr. Plumbeam. So he got some blue paint and some white paint and some red paint and yellow paint and green paint and purple paint. And the next morning, when the neighbors came out of their houses all looked the same, but Mr. Plumbeam's didn't. It looked like a rainbow. It looked like a jungle. It looked like an explosion. The roof was blue. The big orange spot was still there, and there were little orange spots. There were stripes. There were pictures of elephants and lions and steam shovels. There was a clock tower that hadn't been there before, and on the clock tower, he had painted a clock. The people all said, "Mr. Plumbeam, you have popped your cork, flipped your wig, blown your stack, dropped your stopper." They went away muttering, "Plumbeam has mushed his gush, lost his marbles, slipped his hawser." They all decided they would not pretend not to notice. And that very night, Mr. Plumbeam took his truck and got a truck full of green things. He planted palm trees, baobabs, thorn bushes, onions, and frangipani. He bought a hammock and an alligator. And when the other people came out of their houses, they saw Mr. Plumbeam swinging on the hammock between the trees, drinking lemonade. They saw an alligator lying in the grass. "Plumbeam has gone too far," they said. "This used to be a neat street. Plumbeam, what have you done to your house?" they shouted. "My house is me, and I am it. My house is where I like to be, and it looks like all my dreams," said Mr. Plumbeam. The people went away. They asked the man who lived next door to Mr. Plumbeam to go and have a talk with him. "Tell him we all liked it before he changed his house. Tell him his house has to be the same as all of our houses, so we can have a neat street." The man went to see Mr. Plumbeam that evening. They sat under the palm trees, drinking lemonade and talking all night long. And the next morning, the man went out to get lumber and rope and nails and paint. And when the people came out of their houses, they saw a red and yellow house that looked like a ship next door to the house of Mr. Plumbeam. "What have you done to your house?" they shouted. "My house is me, and I am it. My house is where I like to be, and it looks like all my dreams," said the man, who had always loved ships. "He's just like Plumbeam," the people said. "He's got bees in his bonnet, bats in his belfries, and knots in his noodle." And then, one by one, they went to see Mr. Plumbeam late at night. They would sit under the palm trees and drink lemonade and talk about their dreams. And whenever anybody visited Mr. Plumbeam's house, the very next day, the person would set about changing his own house to suit his dreams. So now, whenever a stranger comes to the street of Mr. Plumbeam and his neighbors, the stranger might say, "This is not a neat street." And all of the people say, "Our street is us, and we are it. We like our street, and it looks like all our dreams." And that is the story of the big orange splot.
We have a shared tradition of placing stones together to memorialize and remember what is holding us heavy in our hearts, or to lift up what is giving us life right now. I do have some sad news to share with you that Nancy Turkman died this past week. She had surgery a couple of weeks ago and has struggled to recover. I've been told that Nancy was deeply loved by this community, that she was in the choir for ages. She served in lay leadership as treasurer and as president. May this rock hold your love for Nancy and her family and loved ones. And now, if you have a rock that you would like me to place, please type the name into the chat, or you can put in a little asterisk to signify your stone. Now we light the chalice of our Unitarian Universalist faith. For hopes of a better world, we light this flame. Its light is a symbol of the power of love.
I wish I knew how it would feel to be free. I wish I could break all the chains holding me. I wish I could say all the things that I should say 'em loud, say 'em clear for the whole round world to hear. I wish I could share all the love that's in my heart, remove all the bars that keep us apart. I wish you could know what it means to be me. Then you'd see and agree that every man should be free. I wish I could give all I'm longing to give. I wish I could live like I'm longing to live. I wish I could do all the things that I can do, and though I'm way overdue, I'd be starting anew. Well, I wish I could be like a bird in the sky. How sweet it would be if I found I could fly. Oh, I'd soar to the sun and I'd look down at the sea. Then I'd sing 'cause I'd know how it feels to be free. I'd sing 'cause I'd know how it feels to be free.
Hello, dear ones, and Happy Mardi Gras. Alan Malone, a UU from New Orleans who helped found the North Shore Unitarian Universalist Society in Lacombe, Louisiana, writes in his novel, "This is the home of Mardi Gras. It is said about us that if a neutron bomb were to be dropped at the exact geographical center of our city, and if that bomb killed everyone but 2 New Orleanians, one of them would eventually be out on the street parading, and the other one would be on the sidewalk watching." I am the one who would be on the sidewalk watching. My goodness, this Mardi Gras will be so different for all of us. But like Christmas, Hanukkah, and Kwanzaa, like Thanksgiving, like the graduations, like Jazz Fest, it will still happen in the ways that we creatively find to give us what we need from those holy and holidays. Mardi Gras this year will be far from perfect. And for some of you, this is going to be very tough. It's going to be very tough for me, for sure. And for some of you, it might not be a big deal at all. In the late 70s, my parents chose to go skiing instead of doing Mardi Gras for a few years, and they dragged this sullen and sulking teenager along with them. But we all do Mardi Gras in some way, either full bore or casually, or by evacuating, or by ignoring. Mardi Gras is part of the culture here, and it will deal with you in one way or another. By this weekend in a normal pandemic year, I would have hosted 3 of my 5 Mardi Gras parties as I lived near the route for the quirky neighborhood parades that are so different from the mammoth behemoths that parade uptown with 30 to 50 floats and densely packed crowds. But I go to those too. And I love hosting a place for friends from all over who come to these funky little neighborhood parades. Mardi Gras is a deeply spiritual and very necessary ritual for me each year. My Mardi Gras wigs would be unpacked and hanging from the chandelier, ready to go to any parade or party that pops up. Costume boxes would line the wall and eventually over to the floor to wallow about with the glitter, sequins, and feathers on the floor. I don't know quite what to do with myself this year. How will I do Mardi Gras this year? Because it's going to happen one way or the other. And that makes me feel a little powerless, and I don't like that. When New Orleans Mayor LaToya Cantrell, our first Black woman mayor, canceled Mardi Gras for 2021, which was a necessary, wise, health-centered decision that I expected and was grateful for, I nevertheless felt sadness, pain, grief, anger, and fear. The response from New Orleans was to create our own version of a pandemic Mardi Gras. The crew of house floats and Yardi Gras were born, emerged from the place of grief at losing one of our beloved traditions. A resistance to the pandemic taking one more thing from us. And then came the sub-crews, and then the clinics to learn how to make your own float decorations for your house. Then came national fundraising to enable families to hire the out-of-work artists who make their living by building these beautiful floats. And then programs for mutual aid. Because while Mardi Gras is touted as a free event, it is the time of the year that many businesses and workers and families count on major increases in income for their survival each year. And then, a few weeks ago, Mayor Cantrell invited people to come to New Orleans for Mardi Gras, even though there would be no parades. This confused me and then made me mad, because I know it will be the poor and working class and mostly people of color who are put at risk to cater to and serve tourists who come here. And if these tourists are pleasure traveling during a pandemic, I have a lot of concern about how they will practice safe social distancing to prevent the spread of COVID-19 to us, to our families, to our communities. New Orleans, which has a mask mandate that is mostly enforced, shows a very low positivity rate of only 4%. But that is compared to surrounding parishes that goes up to about 12%. And I know people will be traveling from farther away, from places that have counties and not parishes. I'm worried about our people. I'm worried about you. I'm worried about me.
There is a love holding me. There is a love holding all that I love. There is a love holding all. I rest in this love.
There is a love in me. There is a love in all that I love. There is a love in all I there is a love in all that I
I invite you now into a time of prayer, of collective prayer. A time for you to connect with the sacred, the divine, the holy, that which you hold larger than you. Spirit of life and love, the mystery known and unknown. Recognize this church community, this family of faith, who holds love as its value. Radical, inclusive love that allows us to connect deeper with and to each other. This love, this connection allows us to hold each other in authentic and accountable relationships. These relationships have been built over the decades in this church family. And this allows us to stay whole, even as we may harm one another, even though that is the last thing we would want to do to each other. This love, this connection allows this church family to glide with its faith to transform our community inside these walls and the world outside these walls. We work and play for a world of beloved community that allows each precious soul their freedom to live up to their potential, that we may all live up to our potential. Systems and institutions of oppression have dropped the weight down on our shoulders. This is what we must transform in ourselves, our faith family, and our world. Hold us clearly and dearly as we do this work and play together. Amen. A friend of mine posted a great picture of her and her partner at the Crew de Vue Unparade, of them dancing in a parking lot with the band, and I was so jealous and sad that I had missed it. Honestly, I hadn't even really considered it. I wasn't tracking that it was even happening. And I started thinking, maybe I need to get more aware and start paying more attention to the ways that I can do Mardi Gras right now. And then I saw in the picture, right behind her, and not way back in the background, but right behind her and her friend, a couple wearing no masks. There was not even evidence around their neck or their head. No sign of a mask. I've been trying to think about how I can do Mardi Gras, especially Mardi Gras Day, the pinnacle of close to a month of revelry, costuming, parties, laughing, dancing, eating, and exhausted and exalted dreams in sleep. I thought about maybe finding one friend to be in like a day pod, to wander around with and see what the day holds. But some of my friends won't even consider it. It's too risky, it doesn't make sense. And other friends are game, but they want to go as a larger group, making it too risky for my comfort. I still don't know what I'm going to do. Do you? Do you have your plans figured out yet? Please send them to me. Maybe I will come up with an idea based on your idea that will make sense for me in my world to celebrate Mardi Gras 2021. I keep waiting for something to happen that will make these decisions easier. If I magically got a vaccine today, could I go with a freer conscience? Will a friend call with an idea that will magically make it easier to say yes to a plan? You can see I'm relying on magic. Which led me to wonder, why do I need to do Mardi Gras? What is it that it provides me each year that I'm resistant to giving up this year? It's not just the wigs and costumes, not just the dancing in the street, but it's the freedom. We get to play, we get to run around and play in costumes, run around the city in a way that we don't get to the rest of the year. There is something about the wildness and the madness and excitement that I need. It bubbles in my body, waiting for release. And I can't do it on my own. I need friends, community, a city, a region that does it together in all the ways that we do it. I even need to hear the stories of how people don't do Mardi Gras, because that is also part of it. Maybe even what gives it a tiny bit of balance, even though the imbalance is what we crave at this time of year. I need the music, because the music is what pushes my body to release that pent-up excitement and energy, to release pain and anger and joy and grief that are bottled up each year. And there is so much of that this year. I need to celebrate. And I need to feel that freedom of liberation from this long pandemic year.
You gotta laugh when the spirit says laugh. You gotta laugh
Join us in the spiritual practice of making a donation to this church family. With gratitude to you for your gifts over the last few months, we have caught up on our Share the Plate contributions. Later in this month, you'll hear about the organization that we are sharing the plate with. But for today, please follow the instructions that Kathy Smith will put in the chat for how you can donate to further the work of this congregation. As a ministerial intern who is new to this congregation and new to ministry, it has been such an honor to watch the lay leaders of this congregation, the staff and the ministers work to bring you such amazing worship services every week and to continue the work of the church that happens outside of Sundays. Please give generously. We appreciate your gifts. I am a trainer and organizer with the People's Institute for Survival and Beyond, an organization that has been bringing the Undoing Racism workshop to communities across the nation for 40 years. Founded by 2 Black men and now led by Dr. Kimberly Richards, Black leadership has kept the organization alive and thriving for 40 years. Prior to the 2016 election, we were doing about 10 workshops a month across the country. Prior to the pandemic, we were at about 40 a month. So something happened between 2016 and the pandemic that increased the volume of trainings that we did across the country. After the murder of George Floyd last summer, the request coming in was overwhelming to the organization. I recently did a workshop for Studio in a School in New York, which places art teachers in Title I schools, since the arts have been stripped from public schools. At the end of the training, they were thanking us and saying we were a really great team and we must have been working together for years to be so seamless and flowing and vibing. The team laughed because this was the first time we had ever trained together. But the Institute has a culture of shared leadership that works to combat that white supremacy culture that shows up in all of us, to create a culture of always having each other's back. We don't have to get everything perfect as individuals, because as a team, we will create an explorative and transformative process for the participants. I shared with the group that it had taken me a lot of work to really understand that I could trust the team and to actually let them have my back. Because I thought that I had to get each piece I did perfectly right. And that if I forgot something during the piece at some point and one of my colleagues came in to clarify or expound, I thought I had done a bad job. I also found that I got a little bit possessive of a piece. This is my part, let me do it, don't interrupt. These things I never said aloud to my trainers of color. But the shame of thinking those things, along with the shame of not doing a job well enough, kept me from being a good team member. Because if I couldn't trust them to have my back, they couldn't trust me to have theirs. Now I finally understand how beautiful it feels to let someone have your back and support you, to trust them that way. And what we model for the attendees is important too. They recognized how well the training team worked together enough to point it out, and we had never worked together before. But it has taken me a long time to appreciate and celebrate this liberation from perfectionism, this freedom from having to do it perfectly on my own, this individual responsibility to get it right. That quote by James Baldwin, "Love takes off masks that we fear we cannot live without and know we cannot live within." Perfectionism is a mask that we wear, that I wear. I fear that if I take off this mask of perfectionism, that people will see my flaws, my imperfection, and that I will not be loved or valued. And I also know that living in a mask of perfection is not healthy or tenable and not a way I want to live. As Unitarian Universalist churches, we are also practicing this trust in a collaborative effort with a model of shared ministry. I was asked by my internship team here what my explanation of a shared ministry was. And I talked about how it removes the hierarchy of a minister as the one who does or is responsible for everything to a more collaborative approach where directors of religious education, music ministers, etc. are part of creating the spiritual experiences for the congregation and on all of the work and play that we do together. And in my explanation, it was mentioned to me that I forgot the congregation and its role in a shared ministry. Because of course, without the wisdom and gifts of the lay leaders, we would fail in our ministries. In that moment when it was pointed out to me what I forgot, I felt a little cold wash of shame of not being perfect. But only just a little bit, because I've been doing work on this. And the idea that I think I can be perfect at something that I am just now learning to do is just so laughable. And I gave myself the grace that I needed in that moment, a reminder of how liberating it is to be in shared relationship. I don't have to get it all right. There might not even be a right to get. Who would define what is right? Rabbi Jonathan Sacks interprets God's call to Abraham in Genesis. Walk ahead of me and be perfect, to mean that God empowers us to make mistakes and get it wrong. That is what it is to be human, and God does not ask us to be superhuman. Walk ahead of me and be perfect. Ironically, it was in the writing of this sermon that I came to realize that I really need to do Mardi Gras this year. In some way, in a safe way, that allows me to release the burdens of this year into the streets, into the river. However I do Mardi Gras this year, I will be releasing the mask of perfection, freeing myself from what is unattainable and unnecessary, because perfection is not the goal. Liberation is the goal. Accountable and authentic relationships built on trust are the goal. Communities and lives free of oppression are the goal. And Mardi Gras is just one way to do that this year. One day we will be free. One day we will be free from this pandemic. One day we will be free from oppression. One day we will be free. Amen. Ashe. Blessed be. And laissez le bon temps rouler.
I wish I knew how it would feel to be free. I wish I could break all the chains holding me. I wish I could say all the things that I should say. Say them loud. Say them clear for the whole round world to hear. I wish I could share all the love that's in my heart. Remove all the bars that keep us apart. I wish you could know what it means to be me. Then you'd see and agree that everyone should be free. I wish I could give all I'm longing to give. I wish I could live like I'm longing to live. I wish I could do all the things that I can do. And though I'm way overdue, I'd be starting anew. Well, I wish I could be like a bird in the sky. How sweet it would be if I found I could fly. Oh, I'd soar to the sun and look down at the sea. Then I'd sing, 'cause I'd know how it feels to be free. I'd sing 'cause I'd know how it feels to be free.
Glory, glory, hallelujah, dear ones. May this week, this Mardi Gras season, be a time of liberation for you. May you take to the music or the food or the costumes or pictures of past Mardi Gras. May your feet find some street and some way to dance and let go of what this year has brought to us. Dear friends, be well. May you be safe. May you be free. May you be loved. And may you love. Amen. Go now in peace.